Hello. Well, I've just arrived in Whitehorse, and so I'm taking a little walk around town just to get my bearings, and down by the river right now. And looks like it's going to be a pretty interesting place to visit, and a lot of interesting things to see, and has quite a nice feel about it, so I'm looking forward to it. And so it doesn't take long to realize when you come to Whitehorse that Robert W. Service and his poetry are an important touchstone for people up here in the Yukon, and in particular his poem, The Cremation of Sam McGee. And there's a statue of Robert Service down on Main Street, and the street coming into town bears his name, and there's all kinds of publications with his poetry, and there's a beautiful book with paintings by Ted Harrison that is available also. And Sam McGee's cabin can be seen down at the museum, and that would be the real Sam McGee, not the Sam McGee in the poem. And so those are all important things. And it makes sense for me to find somebody to do a reading of that poem down on the marge at Lake Laberge. And so with that, I contacted a fellow called Tim Green, and he's a local resident and historian and backcountry guide and knowledgeable person. And so he's agreed to do a reading of the poem down at Lake Laberge, and so we're off to do that now. Okay, so just as part of the evidence, this is me standing on the marge at Lake Laberge, and we're going to have the poem read. But anyway, that's the lake in there behind me. So what we're going to do is try and find a spot on the shore here, hopefully out of the wind, where Tim can sit down, and what he'll do is talk a little bit about how the poem came to be, and then he'll do a reading of the poem itself.
Robert Service showed up in the Yukon in the early 1900s, well after the end of the gold rush. He was a bank clerk. He worked for the Imperial Bank of Commerce in Whitehorse and later in Dawson City. After work, he liked to go for walks on the trails around Whitehorse. Then he'd go to the bar and listen to the stories that the old-timers would tell. When he heard the story of a cremation in a stern-wheeler steamboat, that wasn't all that unusual. Certainly burial wasn't possible in the winter, and there were a lot of stern-wheelers around. There are still stern-wheelers pulled up on the banks. That's where the stern-wheelers spent the winter. So he heard that story, and he decided to make a poem out of it. So he needed a setting. So Whitehorse, Yukon River, didn't rhyme all that much. The Lake Laberge, the edge of Lake Laberge, and that quickly became the marge of Lake Laberge. And then he needed a subject name. So he was sitting in the bank writing at night, because that was the only quiet place in town. And he flipped open the ledger book. There was the name of Sam McGee. Sam McGee was one of the bank customers. He was a bridge builder, a road builder. He owned a copper mine. And so he decided to use the name Sam McGee. But Sam McGee was from Lindsay, Ontario, and that doesn't rhyme. So it quickly became Sam McGee was from Tennessee. No sense spoiling a good poem with too many facts. So he wrote the poem and went and told it in the bar, and everybody loved it. And he eventually published the poems and made a lot of money from all his poems, the Sam McGee poem amongst others. That was a bit of a contentious issue with all the other poets in Canada, who didn't think much of his poetic style, and were a bit jealous that he made an awful lot of money out of it. Nobody else, no other poets, made money out of their poetry. Poor old Sam McGee wasn't very happy about the whole thing of him being in the poem, and he retired to Bicycle, Alberta, and finally died there in the 1940s. But Bicycle doesn't rhyme with anything either. Robert Service retired to France, and he passed away in the late 50s. The Cremation of Sam McGee. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. The Arctic trails hold their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The Northern Lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was at night on the marge of Lake Laberge. I cremated Sam McGee. Now, Sam McGee was from Tennessee, where the cotton blooms and blows. Why he left his home in the south to roam round the pole, God only knows. He was always cold, but the land of gold seemed to hold him like a spell, though he'd often say in his homely way that he'd rather live in hell. On a Christmas day, we were mushing our way over the Dawson Trail. Talk of cold, through the parka's fold, stabbed like a driven nail. If our eyes we'd close, then the lashes froze, and sometimes we couldn't see. It wasn't much fun, but the only one to whimper was Sam McGee. And that very night, as we lay wrapped tight in our robes beneath the snow, and the dogs were fed, and the stars o'erhead were dancing heel and toe, he turns to me, and Cap, says he, I'll cash in this trip, I guess. But if I do, I'm asking that you won't refuse my last request. Well, he seemed so low that I couldn't say no. And he said with a sort of moan, it's this cursed cold. It's got right hold till I'm chilled right through to the bone. Yet it tain't being dead, but the awful dread of the icy grave that pains. So I want you to swear that, foul or fair, you'll cremate my last remains. Well, a pell's last need is a thing to heed, so I swore I would not fail. As we started on at the streak of dawn, my God, he looked ghastly pale. He crouched on the sleigh and he raved all day of his home back in Tennessee. And before nightfall, a corpse was all that was left of Sam McGee. There wasn't a breath in that land of death, and I hurried, horror-driven, with a corpse half hid that I couldn't get rid because of a promise given. It was lashed to the sleigh, and it seemed to say, you may tax your brawn and brains, but your promise true, and it's up to you to cremate these last remains. Now, a promise made is a debt unpaid, and the trail has its own stern code. In the days to come, though my lips were dumb, in my heart, how I cursed that load. In the long, long night, by the lone firelight, as the huskies round in a ring howl out their woes to the homeless snows, oh God, how I loathed that thing. And every day, that quiet clay seemed to heavier and heavier grow. And on I went, till the dogs were spent, and the grub was getting low. The trail was bad, and I felt half mad, but I swore I would not give in. And I'd often sing to that hateful thing, and it hearkened with a grin. Till I came to the marge of Lake Laberge, and a derelict there lay. It was jammed in the ice, but I saw in a trice it was called the Alice May. And I looked at it, and I thought a bit, and I looked at my frozen chum. "That here," said I with a sudden cry, "is my crematorium." Some planks I tore from the cabin floor, and I lit the boiler fire. Some coal I found that was lying around, and I heaped the fuel higher. The flames just soared and the furnace roared, such a blaze you seldom see. And I burrowed a hole in the glowing coal, and I stuffed in Sam McGee. Then I made a hike, for I didn't like to hear him sizzle so. And the heavens scowled, and the huskies howled, and the winds began to blow. It was icy cold, but the hot sweat rolled down my cheeks, and I didn't know why. And the greasy smoke in an inky cloak went streaking down the sky. I do not know how long in the snow I wrestled with grisly fear. But the stars came out and danced about ere again I ventured near. I was sick with dread, but I bravely said, "I'll just take a peep inside. I guess he's cooked, and it's time I looked." And the door I opened wide. And there sat Sam, looking cool and calm, in the heart of the furnace roar. He wore a smile you could see for a mile, and he said, "Please close that door. It's fine in here, but I greatly fear you'll let in the cold and storm. Since I left Plum Tree down in Tennessee, it's the first time that I've been warm." There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. The Arctic trails hold their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The Northern Lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night here on the marge of Lake Laberge. I cremated Sam McGee.
Beauty. Okay, well, there you have it. That's the cremation of Sam McGee. And so I hope you enjoyed that, and maybe a little memory trip down to grade school Canadian literature class when we all would have read that. But anyway, that's the poem. And so thanks for watching, and I'll have some other videos about Whitehorse. So thanks again, and bye for now.